members of the Knesset, citizens of Israel, thank you for listening to my testimony today in this Commission of Inquiry into the Gaza War. Let me start by saying that the truth is we really don't need a state commission of inquiry to tell us what went wrong in Gaza. This is not like the space shuttle explosion where we need rocket scientists to come and figure out what gaskets didn't work and why the space shuttle blew up. This is really quite clear to anyone who wants to review the facts, if we would care to think about it. And it is worthwhile for us to think about them. Number one, question: how did we come to have a small terror enclave on our border? Small in terms of world geopolitics. How did we come to have this terror enclave on our border? Answer: we created it. Sad to say. Or rather, to put it better, we enabled it. How so? Israel controlled Gaza as an administered territory from the year 1967, after the Six-Day War, until the year 1994, after the Oslo Accords. In those accords, Israel, in contradiction to international law, which prohibits making treaties with terrorist organizations, and which also mandates punishment of terrorists, Israel created the Palestinian Authority from the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Then, Israel withdrew its army and its civilians fully from Gaza, from the outskirts of Gaza, the settlements that were built around Gaza in the previous 40 years. Israel withdrew those settlers and the army completely from Gaza in the year 2005. Then Hamas took control of Gaza in 2006. How else did we enable this terror enclave to grow? When Hamas kidnapped, after a cross-border attack, killing numbers of soldiers, when Hamas kidnapped soldier Gilad Shalit, Israel allowed him to be held in Gaza, prisoner, for 5 years, until Israel released hundreds of prisoners in exchange for him. This also whet the appetite of Hamas for kidnapping. All these policies enabled Hamas, including allowing the wicked jihadist Qatar, nation of Qatar, to fund Gaza with money. Now, my friends, let's look at other aspects of the failure, of our failure. The intelligence failure. Public information has already told us that the intelligence agencies had signs that Hamas was preparing for something, but they did not recommend responding to it because they did not think it was really getting ready to strike on October 7th. And getting ready to respond on the Israeli side, they believed, would betray their sources of intelligence. That is to say, their spies within the Gazan community. And therefore, make those spies non-usable in the future, and, of course, endanger those spies in the near present. I think this point deserves some serious thought about how we relate to our intelligence gathering in general. An intelligence agency secures spies among the enemy. It pays them money. But if the enemy discovers them, they will be killed, those spies. If the agency, who the information they provide, if the agency uses the information those spies provide, it may increase the chance of them being discovered. So there are two things bad about this method. One is you sacrifice your spy if you use his information, which is not nice. And two, you are reluctant to use the information provided if you are not sure it's a real emergency, because you want to have the spy there for a more real, in your estimation, emergency in the unknown future. What then, my friends, members of the Knesset and the Israeli public, what therefore is the conclusion we should draw? I believe the conclusion we should draw is that we should not seek intelligence like this. In the event, it tends to make us either afraid to act or cruel. Those are the two options it leaves us with. And that is not a good model. Better to have a more fail-safe system, even if it takes more time and resources. For example, better just to sit well-armed on your border. If I would say a little bit more, my friends, what is a better option than paying for spies among the Arabs? Perhaps, my friends, the better option is simply to have Jews living there. I'm talking primarily, of course, now with regard to Yehuda and Shomron, but of course in Gaza too, until we removed the Jews living there. That was a good way to keep tabs on what's going on there. And I think any place in Eretz Israel, and Gaza, as you know, is in parts of the land of Israel, the best way to find out what's going on there is to have Jews living there. And in fact, that reminds me of the admonition of our great codifier of Jewish law, the Rambam, Maimonides, who already 1,000 years ago wrote that the non-Jews in Israel should not be allowed to have areas where they live alone, but they should always be mixed among the Jewish population, because if they have areas where they live alone, then, like they had in Gaza, then it becomes a place where they can make trouble from. It's a very simple but basic concept. To conclude, my friends, was it really a terrible judgment call that the intelligence agencies did? It was wrong, of course, their choice not to alert the security forces, the army, to be on alert. But it was not terribly wrong. What do I mean? It was terribly wrong in its consequences, but the mistake itself was not unfathomable. That is to say, if we were in their position, we may have made the same mistake. It's important to remember, these are very delicate decisions, these judgment calls when we're in these situations. And in fact, Hamas have been doing exercises all year, military exercises, in order to do just this, to dull the Israeli senses to them. And it worked. And therefore, my conclusion, dear friends, is that it is better not to rely on these delicate decisions. Sometimes it's hard to avoid them. That's what the military and intelligence is about. It's the delicate decisions we want people that are good at, but humans make mistakes. And that's what happened. And so, as much as possible, We want to eliminate the need to rely on these delicate decisions. And find ways, as indicated earlier, to have more fail-safe systems. That is not to say that we should rely on expensive fences. That is another conclusion, I think, from this war. We all know that expensive fences are not going to protect us. That is not a fence is not a fail-safe method. No, a fence is an accident waiting to happen. No fence makes good neighbors. Rather, a good army is what makes for good neighbors. And final conclusion, a few more points to review, lessons to review. 1, allowing jihadists like Qatar to fund groups like Hamas is a bad idea. 2, when Israel controls the territory in Israel/Palestine, Palestine meaning the British Mandate Palestine from which Israel emerged, that's the safest thing for both Jew and Arab alike. 3, don't release prisoners in order to free hostages. Rather, push the army against the wall. Push the army against the wall hard enough so that they release your hostages. Thank you, and God bless.